Hey,
Hey, it worked.
it did. It got through without a glitch. I got to mark this one down in the calendar.
Oh, was that the first time it worked?
Like, I have the worst time. It's like I am the company joke with my outros and intros. I can get endless other clips to play, but for whatever
Yeah.
dumb reason, my outro and my intro fight me every time.
Well, somebody has to be the company joke until someone else takes over.
That is so true.
You
I'm
can
so
hand off the baton when it's time.
I'm trying to send Ash a message because I'm not sure everything connected. Should have, but all right. Well, we're just gonna go.
You
We're
just
just
tell
gonna
me
go.
what to do.
So, thank you for coming back. I'm
Yeah,
excited
happy
about
to.
that. Okay, we're fine. My computer's just acting a fool.
Oh, okay.
We're fine. We're fine.
We're fine.
Sorry about that. I added a couple channels I was double streaming on, and yeah. So
Don't you hate it though? Like when you're right in the middle of like about to start something and it has tech involved, and all of a sudden it's like, something's not working, and they don't know how to fix it.
my first
But
podcast, I recorded all of them. I didn't stream them. I just recorded them and then uploaded them because that's what
mm,
I was comfortable doing because there was significantly less buttons and technicalities,
right,
and I could always go back and edit and fix it.
right,
If the intro glitched, it was fine. I could go back and edit it.
right.
Yeah, now I'm just like, well, hopefully they'll forgive me.
We're doing it live.
Yeah, that's right. Fuck it. We'll do it live. It's like the greatest clip ever. God, I still want to do Network. Oh, I want to do Network. You remember that movie?
Yeah, I
I
haven't watched
swear
it in a
that
long
thing's a
time.
documentary.
It is. There
I
are so
swear it
many
is.
that are, but that one definitely is.
I was just telling you, I do the movie show. If I can get a
Yeah,
digital copy of Network, would you want to do that one with me? Because we could break
yeah,
that crap down, my
yeah,
predictive
that'd be a
programming
great
buddy.
one. That would be a great one to do.
I do those Thursdays. So if you're available on a
Thursdays.
Thursday.
Okay. Let's see. I'm so busy all the time. Yeah, Thursday's good.
Living the dream out there in Cali.
Well, you know what? In a lot of ways, I am, because I know that a lot of people don't have the luxury that I have.
Right. Me
I
too.
am able to spend hours on end reading and researching and writing and
Yes.
trying to consolidate all this stuff and put it out for other people. And I am blessed enough at this point in my life to be able to do that. And I
Yes.
I know obviously not everybody has that luxury, and I didn't have it for a long time, so I get it. and
Mhm.
and the thing is like I sort of feel like that's kind of it is my job. I don't exactly
Mhm.
get paid for it, but it's kind of my superpower, if I could put it that way, being able to like pull lots of info and like make it
Well,
palatable
and you're a
for.
super fast reader too, if I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
correctly. You're a
like
speed
weird
reader.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it speed reader, but I mean, I read a lot of stuff, and
Mhm.
because I love to. I love
Mhm.
to read. I've always loved to read. And
Mhm.
it's relatively easy for me to take, large amounts of info and then put it all in here and then
Mhm.
blurt out something much smaller and, easier, I think, to understand.
That's
Um,
good. Having a concise, digestible information. I think that is key right now, and
it
I mean,
is.
we keep talking about the information war in various ways, but I do think that's what we're living through.
We
Um,
are.
you
Oh,
can call it a lot
absolutely.
of different things, but yeah, being
Yeah.
able to have a clear, concise message in under 2 minutes is key.
Yeah. Well, and I don't always get it right, for sure, because a lot of the
Me
stuff that I
either.
dig into is really, really deep, like really esoteric stuff, and pulling from like all different
Well, and you're going through
eras and
ancient texts too.
yeah,
You're dealing with yeah,
all of it. Yeah, I mean,
why don't you
as much as I can. I mean, I I haven't even remotely touched all of it, but like I go through this stuff that and I know because other people have told me, like, I tried to read that book and I couldn't get through it, or I tried
yeah.
to look at this and it just didn't make sense to me. And I'm like, okay, well, here's basically what it is talking
Mhm.
about.
Mhm.
But what fires me up to do that is because when I started looking, I saw how all these things connected. You know,
Mhm.
uh, these people were saying the same things over and over and over and over.
Through the
And all the different
centuries.
religions saying the same thing, just using
Mhm.
different words and different
Mhm.
stories. From then on, I was just hooked because I was like, "Oh my god, everyone's saying the same thing, except right now, you've got all these people fighting about it. Like,
Yeah.
who's right?" And I'm like, "They're all right.
Yeah.
They're all right." I mean, to a certain extent, they're all right because they're basically all saying the same thing.
Real quick, thank you, Vanessa DC, for the cookie. She says, "Hey, beautiful Mary and beautiful guest. Will be another great show." She's a sweetheart.
Oh, awesome.
She's
Thank
such a
you.
sweetie.
That's so nice.
I know. She
Well, so like what you were saying, and because it's
Yeah.
a really good point, is that we are in the information age, right?
Mhm.
Information
Yes.
war for sure, because it's
Mhm.
been weaponized, but at the same time, we're using it as a weapon on our side, as an
Right.
asset
I think
to
that's
be able
probably
to
one of the first times
consolidate.
in history. I mean,
Yeah, it's
maybe
gotta
in
be, right?
maybe in World War II, I could say that that was the first major skirmish I can find evidence, but prior, I mean, even before the printing press, what were they supposed to do?
Right.
Like, how would you counter the
Right.
message?
Right. I mean, word of mouth, basically,
Telling
and trying
stories
to.
and yeah, but I
But
mean,
so
how
slow, and now we have everything literally at the speed of light and
I could
massive
and we
amounts
still
of
think it's slow. We
right.
still get
Like,
mad
"Oh,
like
my
me when it
internet,
glitches.
yeah. But the thing is, though, they try to use that and still try to use that to manipulate all of us,
Yes.
what we see and what we think, and, get people to, sign on to different viewpoints and,
Yes.
basically by consensus, because they don't wanna feel left
Convince
out.
us.
Yeah,
Yes.
but at the same time, we are then able to connect, albeit having to do it through sort of, back channels and alternative media things like what you're doing, but it's still happening,
Yeah.
so and people are connecting and sharing truth about things and being able to like resonate with each other across the internet. That one fascinates me. I
I feel
mean,
like in the last year, it's really speeding up. Like, as
mhm.
far as people like, what you and I've been talking about, like, you were one of the first friends I made on Telegram.
So, so were you.
Really,
Yeah,
you were one of
yeah.
the first people I really connected with. You and my other buddy, Spirit Fox, were my 2, like
Mhm.
I just clicked with you guys.
Yeah, because you can
Absolutely,
feel it. Yeah,
because we were
and
just
that's
talking about frequency before we went live.
yeah.
So, because we were gonna talk about the awakening process, and I was
Mhm.
sharing with you a lot of mine. How did your journey begin? Was it before? Because mine was in 2020 when I really,
Yeah.
really like, I knew everything was bullshit. I just didn't realize everything was fake,
That's
if you
kinda
know what
what
I'm saying.
yeah, well, and you and I had real similar lead-ins to that, I think, because we were both sick,
Right.
and so in fact, I was writing about this in that book is m trying to explain why I could see what I saw in 2020.
Mhm.
But a lot of that was the medical stuff,
Yeah.
realizing that the medical system was crap, that
Yes.
it couldn't help me, that I had to take the reins and do it myself.
Yep.
But it just because I understood that didn't mean that I saw it everywhere else. It wasn't
Right.
until really the COVID
Yeah.
and the election when it
Yep.
all clicked and I realized, "Oh my god,
Everything is
the
fake.
yeah, and everything that I figured out for the medical system applies across the board.
Mhm.
Education, politics,
Yep.
religion,
Religion.
all of it, and it
Yep.
was just like so I think when I fully, like, came online, I guess, in 2020, but the lead into that was decades, you
Mhm.
know? It's just I didn't
Yeah.
see the pieces until I really got to Cluebird, and then I
Mhm.
was able to look back at these different points in my
Yes.
life and go, "Oh my gosh, that's what that meant
Yeah.
when I didn't wanna get that vaccination, or I didn't wanna take my kids into the pediatrician, or when I felt that really, like, bad feeling in my gut that day, like, and I at the time, I guess I might have said I had gut feeling or intuition, but that's not really the way I saw it
Right.
until later when I could look back at all of those dots and go,
And
"Oh my
connect.
god, that now I get it. Now I
Yeah.
get what's been happening." And
Yeah.
all of a sudden the picture coalesces and then, your whole world kind of starts to explode.
Mhm.
But I think that, like you were just saying 2020 was huge for you
Mhm.
also, and I know it was for a lot of people because
Yeah.
most of the time when people start this awakening process,
Mhm.
it's because of a crisis. Something
Yeah.
scares the shit out of you to the point that you go, "What in the world is going on here?" And it yanks the rug right out from under you. So, it kind of kicks like I know it doesn't happen that way for everybody, but I think all in all, that's probably the most common one is
I'd
that
I'd say maybe
some peop
70%. That's what
yeah,
I
I
hear.
mean,
You
something just really rocks your world.
Even if it's not them direct, if it's a parent or a spouse, something and
Mhm.
I think medical or financial are the 2 biggest that I hear most often.
Yeah.
Either
Yeah.
medical or financial, just, everything went and I've had both.
Yeah. And
I've
then
had
there's
it
the other
all.
stuff too, like maybe people have like a psychedelic trip or, like some or a near death experience or
Yes.
something that gives them all of a sudden kind of like that bigger cosmic view of stuff and really jolts them awake. But, you know, I'm not going to try to say that I think COVID was a good thing, but if
It
there's
it
any
pulled the scab off of a lot of
yeah,
stuff.
exactly,
It
and
really
then,
did.
not only did it make people, go, "What in the heck?" Well, not everybody, but, some people start to question things, but then it locked us all up in our houses, took away work, school, normal day-to-day
Yep.
activities, and
Because I would have never
then
believed we could live in tyranny.
mhm,
I would never have believed in my own church I wouldn't be welcome. I would have been made to sit in the back section where there was a wall and listen to a speaker.
yep,
I haven't been
yep,
back.
and I saw that
I'm still
happening, I
mad
mean,
at
we
him.
all did. Yeah, and it was happening all over the place,
I
you
was
know?
like, what do I need? A yellow star? Like what is going on here?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
and
and
but
no.
then, I know we're on the totally on the same page here. It's like you see all of this
Mhm.
going on. It's very clear to
Yes.
you.
Yes.
And
And
then you look
and
around
then
and
you
other
look
people
around and
aren't
nobody
seeing
else
it.
sees it. And then
Yeah,
you're
and they
like, "Why
think
am I
you're
the
nuts.
only asshole that sees this?"
Yeah. Well, so I'll never forget. We were living in England at the time when all
Ah,
the COVID stuff kicked off. And
I'm still
England
jealous. It
actually
must have
was
been
kind of
beautiful to live there and just
it
have time
was
to experience it, you know?
yeah,
Like on a
well,
trip, you're
I
rushed,
mean,
but if you're
thankfully,
living there
I had 7 years prior of living there that I got to enjoy it, but,
wow.
um, when this stuff happened and this is interesting because their society is actually much more socialist than certainly than ours is or that
Yeah.
we would have thought it
They're
was.
much more brainwashed, it seemed, and
They
again,
are, there's
I
just a
didn't
lot more
realize
of
it.
that, leftover from the war kind of
Yeah,
mentality, like buck
yeah,
up and, chin up and carry on, and there's a kind of pride in that. So when that gets tapped into again, which is what they did with COVID,
right, the
everybody was
manipulation.
like ready to go.
Yeah.
So, but they were behind the US as far as like the masks and the lockdowns. So that summer after things kicked off, we actually took a trip back to the US in the like summer
Mhm.
visit trip.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and
You went
we
to your
went
home area, right, where you grew up,
yeah.
if I remember.
Yeah. Well, and we had a house there at the time and
Yeah,
so we loved going there, but
yeah.
England wasn't doing masks yet. And so when we got to America, I mean, I knew we were gonna have to deal with it traveling, which was
Mhm.
bad enough, but I tried to make peace with that as best I could. I, like, made stuff specific. Like, I literally sewed stuff for my family to wear because I didn't want them wearing
Yeah.
the
We did
manufactured
too.
stuff.
We did too.
So
I was like, "I'd rather have my dirty dishcloth than whatever they made in
and
China."
I was willing to not go and or raise a stink over the mask thing. But I have my family, right? So I didn't wanna do that
Yeah.
to my kids, it would have meant
Yeah.
not flying, right? Because they weren't there was no working on.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
we get to America and everybody's doing the mask thing, which they hadn't been doing where I was living. And I went out shopping one day. I'll never forget. I went into, I think it was like TJ Maxx or something.
Mhm.
I got out of the car, I walked in the store, and everybody in the store is wearing a mask. I'm not. And I was like, I'm not doing this. But I looked around and I just started bawling. Like it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like what has happened
To these
to my
people.
country, to these
Yeah.
people, to, and they didn't even seem to mind. It was just like, oh, do put on my little mask, and I was like, oh, I can't do it. And it literally broke my heart seeing that,
Yeah.
because it was such a shock, because I hadn't been like eased into it maybe the way
Mhm.
it rolled out in different places. So I went from a spot where it wasn't happening to a spot where it was fully happening. And I was just flabbergasted. I mean, and so I knew, just like you're saying,
Mhm.
like, this is just wrong. There's
Yeah.
every level, this is wrong.
I felt it in my bones.
Me too. Me too. And in a way that you couldn't ignore even if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, I know I caused all kinds of problems for my husband and my family and whatever throughout, because I was like, I'm not doing it. Like,
Mhm.
so we went, and my kids were still trying to go to school at the time before they'd shut all that down. And we went on another little trip and drove up to Scotland.
Mhm.
And this was when the masks were starting to kick off there. So this was in, I think, October, I want to say.
Scotland's a mess now from Scotland and Ireland are really
And it's just so sad. Well,
God,
for
and
a
they were
zillion
such
reasons.
amazing people and culture. I remember my
Yeah.
family went to Ireland and stuff in the '90s and
Uh-huh.
just absolutely loved it. That's part of my heritage is Irish.
Yeah. No, no kidding. Yeah, so we go on this little trip and we're just driving. We just took a road trip and we stopped at, they call them services, where it's kind of like a rest area, but it's like the gas stations and the
Oh,
food
okay.
stuff and whatever is like all in one little spot at these,
Okay.
places along the road.
That's handy.
Very convenient, really. So we walk in, and my kids had already, kind of been conditioned into it, I guess, at school, to put
Mm.
the masks on. And I
Yeah.
hadn't put a stop to that yet, which I did later. But we walk into this services area and I didn't put one on. And my daughter's walking with me
Mm.
and she's like, Mom, you look like kind of an asshole. And I go, well, I know, but I'm not doing it. I was like, baby, you can, if you're okay wearing it, I'm not going to tell you not to. Go
Mhm.
ahead. But
Mhm.
I'm not, and I won't. And I said, and watch what happens. So we went in there, and of course I was getting dirty looks left and right, but
Right.
I just knew that I was right. Like I didn't
Mhm.
I guess it's a vibe thing, like I wasn't putting off the vibe like, oh, I don't know if I should be doing this. And it was so funny because there were other people who were kind of like not really wearing it or not wearing it. And they had these people watching at the door and they were stopping all of them. Like, sir, you need to
I got
do this.
chased out of stores. I was told
Mhm.
I wasn't welcome, and I was like, "Fine, you bitches don't need my money."
I know. I would just be
I
like,
was
okay.
I was just I was so fucking mad.
Oh,
By
me too.
21, I was just getting ornery.
Yeah.
I was getting cussed.
Yeah, me too. Well, and it's wild because what I realized was that if you walked around with the sort of the vibe coming off of you that you were waiting to get caught or
Mhm.
or
Then
corrected
you
or something,
did.
it would always
That's
happen.
true. It's a frequency.
Yeah. I mean,
Whatever you admit, whatever your thoughts are, that's the frequency you will admit. That's the
yeah,
simplest way I can explain it. So if you're
yeah.
having self-doubt, anything like that, you're more likely to get caught. If you
Mhm.
if I think I'm going to something and it's maybe not something I'm really enthused about, I just give myself a mental pep talk about how fabulous it's going to be and how much fun I'm going to have. And I
Mhm.
always have a better time.
Yeah.
I just
It's
shift my
amazing.
frequency.
Yeah. Yep.
Frequently, pep talks are the simplest way. Do you have a better method? That's what I've found for me that when I know like, you can feel when your frequency is
Yeah.
not right and you're like, "I gotta shift it."
Yeah. Yeah, so I think what you just said is basically what I'm gonna say, because my go-to trick is always, like, gratitude. Find something to
Yes.
be grateful for in that moment,
Yes.
even if every part of it sucks. Like,
Mhm.
well, I got air going in my lungs, that's pretty
Mhm.
cool. Or, the sky is pretty today, or just something and it can't be like you're trying to like one against one counter whatever is
Mhm.
bothering you. You have to just shift your focus away from
Yeah.
the thing that's upsetting you or has the
Yes.
potential to upset you and just put it somewhere else
Mhm.
and focus there.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of times people get stuck, and I do too, in
Mhm.
the low spots.
Yeah.
And it's like you think that you need to like focus on fixing it, and that's not really how it works. You have to just focus on something else, something that's good, and then the other thing will lose its power,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It does. That's yeah.
But it's hard to do sometimes, and it's really hard to do when you're actually feeling low, you know? And that's
It's a
actually
challenge
yeah, and that's
because
actually something.
I
Go ahead.
find if when I was really sick and I was in so much pain, I had a
Yeah.
really hard time shifting it because I felt like I was lying to myself. And I think
Mhm.
that's a common thing for people that are struggling with that and trying to think their
Yeah.
way out of it, you know?
Yeah, that,
I
like, you're bullshitting yourself or
Yeah.
something, and
I've heard it described so many different ways, and it's again, like you said earlier, they're all talking about the same thing. It's
well,
just
and
whatever communication works better for you to understand this concept, but
yeah.
frequency, vibe,
Mhm.
intuition, pick your word, it's
Mhm.
still what we're talking about.
Well, and I think there's a lot of, we talk about, like, the limiting beliefs and underlying
Yes.
beliefs about things, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, especially as Americans, we have the ones that are the stuff like "No pain, no gain," and
Mhm.
"Life is hard,"
Hardwired.
right? And
Hardwired.
yeah,
Yes.
all of these things that have been etched into us where we think that one suffering is inevitable, which I guess in some ways it is,
Mm.
but that's another discussion. Um, that's the whole like Buddha thing.
That's
Um,
another episode.
yeah,
I know
but
where you're going.
I mean, if you really, really, truly believe that in order to earn something good, you have to
Yeah.
have suffered for it, which is kind of like that the no pain, no gain idea. And there
It's
are
part
more
of a
that I can use
dogma
right
too.
now.
For
It
certain
is.
that's certain dogmas, push that more than others.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not
Yeah.
an expert on it, but
Oh,
there's
I
certain whenever I was staying with friends or I travel, I'll go to their churches.
uh-huh.
And I enjoy learning new things, seeing new experiences. I was born and raised Methodist, so
Mhm,
pretty milk toast. It's like
mhm, mhm,
my I had just this nice little church, and everybody was, like it was just as milk toast as it can be till 2020. But
mm,
when I would go to other churches, I would have this hardcore like gut feeling like something wasn't right. Some of them it would be fine, and
uh-huh.
some of them I would be listening to whatever the sermon they were talking about, and usually it was when they were talking about repentance, suffering, and different things. It didn't sit in my soul correctly,
Yep. The
you
vibe's
know?
wrong, you might
It's
not consciously know, but it's
yeah,
not working for you because it's not true,
right,
and it's
right.
not true on a really fundamental level of, like, your soul. How do I wanna put this? Your soul knows, your subconscious knows, all of this
Yes,
stuff, whatever you wanna call it, is tapped in to everything. It already
yes,
knows everything in the universe. You don't know is as the you sitting here because most of the time you haven't tapped into that
mhm,
stuff, but when something, grates on you or doesn't resonate for you in that way, it's because it's trying to tell you something.
yeah,
And we are taught to push all of that down. But we're taught
Yes.
to push our emotions down,
The
our
system or the
intuition.
matrix teaches us that.
Mhm,
I think as children, we naturally have that and express it so clearly. And then the further we go through school, and this goes back to the institutions,
mhm.
but they just push all those instincts out of you. They retrain you to
Yep,
ignore all of your God given instincts.
yep. And your
It's-
parents do it too. Even the
they
best
don't
parents
mean
in the
to, but
world.
yeah, they do.
Well,
Mine
because
did.
when you think about it, like, I love this example. So when you're a little kid,
Hmm.
you don't know how to crawl or walk, but you do those and talk. You end up
Hmm.
doing those things by instinct.
Yeah.
And your parent or whoever's taking care of you or watching you is standing by and clapping and yay, look at you,
Rewarding.
go,
Hmm.
right? For
Yeah.
this instinctual thing that you're doing. But then somewhere along the way, the focus in you shifts from just doing the thing that you instinctively are driven to doing things to get the hand clapping and the smiles and the
The
added
reward
girl, added
system.
boy stuff, right? So it
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just the nature of the way we have to be brought up, but that's what happens is that
Hmm.
we lose the inner focus and it shifts to somebody outside of ourselves
Yeah.
that's telling us what's good or bad, right or wrong, good job, bad job, and we've just taken that to the extreme in everything where we've lost the ability to just tune into our own instincts
Hmm.
about things. And I always say we've sort of our compasses are all screwed up. Like we've
Hmm.
lost the ability to just use our own inner guidance. And like you were just saying, that's what we were talking about. That's the inner guidance. And we're
Hmm.
told to stuff it down, don't pay attention, don't be emotional, don't let your
Right.
emotions get the best of you.
And
Oh, you're
especially
just
for
so
women, you get made
silly.
fun of if you're
Mhm,
emotional. Mhm.
mhm.
"Oh, you're
And
just
men
being a
too, right?
girl, you're just" yeah. "Oh, are you PMSing?" Mhm.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite.
God,
Mhm.
I wanna slap the crap out of
And the thing
shit
is
like
those
that.
emotions those are our guideposts. I
Right.
mean, that is our guidance system here,
I
and
think
we have been taught to ignore it.
the worst one, tell me if you think this too, we are taught to ignore the fight or flight.
Yes.
I think that is
Yes.
the worst thing they do to us,
Mhm,
particularly for females. Like you
mhm.
have that little tickle in the back and you're looking over your shoulder, you something doesn't feel right, your instincts kicking in. You fight or flight, get out. And
Right,
we're taught to be like, "Oh, you're just being over dramatic. Oh, there's nothing
right,
there anyway."
right. Or,
No,
just be nice,
just
honey,
be nice. It's okay. He's just
just
deranged, but it'll
yeah,
be okay. He's
yeah,
just
so we
crazy.
well, so there's what? There's fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, right? Those are the 4 responses when we sense that there's danger.
Now explain fawn and freeze because I'm sort of okay with those, but I bet a lot of people don't. So
Okay, yeah. So fight or flight, we know, right?
right.
You're either gonna fight or run away.
Mhm.
Um, freeze is when everything just shuts down, and basically, the way
Mm.
I understand it is like your amygdala gets triggered and
Oh.
you pull resources away from your frontal lobe, like your thinking part of your brain,
Mhm.
and the creative processes in you are shut. Oh, look at me. Look at that. Is that that's cool. I didn't know.
That's
That's cool.
awesome.
It's a
I think that's on Kick. I don't
I
know.
don't know what that is, but whatever. Okay,
I think
so
it's Kick.
I talk with my hands in case you hadn't
I
noticed.
do too.
Um, so freeze is when everything shuts down, and actually there are a lot of people who are in a freeze response probably right now as we speak.
Mm,
Because that is one that's linked to depression. It's the thing that's
that
kicked
makes
in
sense.
when you feel
That
like you
makes a lot
just
of
can't
sense.
do it, like you can't make yourself do anything. I can't get out of bed.
So
Like
it's a
my
shutdown.
Yeah,
It's
because
it's an
you're
abs
shut down and
so
you didn't decide to shut down. Your brain did that for you completely outside of your awareness. You didn't
wow.
choose that.
Wow.
That happened. Yeah,
Okay.
and you didn't choose to go in and you can't just choose to come out.
Mhm.
right? So then telling yourself, "Oh, I'm a lazy sack because I'm not doing anything and I can't get out of bed. I just need more motivation. I just need more this. I just need more that." Nuh-uh, because all you're doing is actually adding stress to your already overstressed brain that's
And then along
already
comes Big
decided that
Pharma.
it's shutting down.
Mm.
Yeah, so that one, when I
I
figured
didn't
that
know
one
about this.
out, I
I'm
was like,
learning. Thank you. I
"Holy."
love to learn.
Well, because I mean, I'm guessing, especially since you had the experience of being so sick too, that
Mhm.
probably was something that you went
Yep.
through. I know I did, and
Yep.
it still happens to me. It
Yep.
still will happen to me, and thankfully, most of the time, I'm kind of aware. It's like, "Oh, man, here I am again. Okay." And the best thing you can do for that is to you have to slowly work your way out of it by celebrating even the tiniest stuff that you
Yeah.
do that is
Yeah.
above what where you're at. So
Right.
so that's the freeze, and then there's fawn. And fawn, I mean, it refers to like a baby fawn, like with a mother, right? But
Okay.
what fawning basically is you start people pleasing just to navigate the
Oh.
situation. So you feel you're in danger, but what you do then is try to make the person who's putting you in danger happy with you.
I'm thinking
So
about children right now. I'm
mhm,
thinking about our school systems.
and
So
COVID
much is so much is making sense right now to
and
the
the way
behaviors
people
I've been seeing.
responded. Mhm,
Yeah. How
mhm.
soon's your book
It's
coming out?
you know what? I don't even it's not even in there. I can probably put it in, but I don't know if that's even in this one.
We
But,
gotta talk about your book before the end of it, and I'm
okay.
excited about it.
Well, I'm excited too. It's been a long, long time coming.
Mhm.
And mostly it's like I was telling you before the show, I had all these things that I had been writing pretty much daily, both like in my journals, but a lot of it ended up on Telegram as
As
posts.
we Yeah, as we were learning and doing things, and I mean, I've been reading your work now for 3 years.
And that's just it. I mean, it's been like I
Yeah.
plus years of posting, not
Yeah.
every day, but many days. And it was all well, this sounds conceited. I don't mean it that way. But it was all inspired. It was all the stuff that I was excited about at that moment of, something I'd read or something that came to me. And then there's
Mhm.
also, some downloads and that type
Mhm.
of stuff in there. And I was trying to, take all those pieces and turn them into a book
Yeah.
and go back and sort of elaborate and make it better and put all the pieces together. And I had two different people who do publishing type stuff come to me and tell me what they thought, and they said, no, it's already written. You don't mess with these, don't change these, keep them how they are and
Mhm.
put them into a book.
Yeah.
um, and then, if you want to expound on other stuff later on, that's great. But the energy of these is in the
It's like a
original
collection of
writing.
essays, basically.
Yeah,
And
really short,
you can
you know?
yeah, you can write blurbs, like, explaining a little more, like, after it, but not change the essay. But if you wanted to expand,
Exactly.
like, a
Yeah,
footnote, yeah, just knowing, because I've read most of, at least a huge chunk. But that's the other beautiful thing about our Telegram channels is our awakening process is out there for the world to
right.
see, like mine is. Mine's public. It's just
And
out there.
that's just it, and that's what I think is helpful to other people,
Yeah.
because
Like, I've come a
once
long
you
way.
understand, yeah, and once you understand that it's possible, it can start happening for you, right? So,
Mhm.
you know, once you realize that this is available to everyone, it's not, I don't know that you can actually choose to have an awakening. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I have to think about that. But I
It
think
always just happens naturally, doesn't it? It's
I
something
think it
triggers
does.
or pushes them. Like, for us, it
Yeah,
was our medical journey. And
right.
then, so what we were to expand a little, I've been monitoring the chat to expand a little on, like, so I was really sick for 12, 13 years. I still
Mhm.
struggle, but it's nothing like what I was in.
Yeah,
So
that's
around
me too. Yeah.
2019, I was so fed up with all the pharma, I just decided I was gonna start getting off everything. And my
Mhm.
doctors, I was on dozens of stuff, and my doctors were like, no, these are permanent drugs." And I was like, "No, watch me."
Yeah.
watch me. And in 1
That
year, I got off. I mean, I have a
mhm,
handful of little things that I still take, but comparatively, I got off a
mhm,
dozen things.
mhm.
I got off all the serious ones.
Yeah,
Now I mean, we're talking about like an anti-inflammatory is pretty much where I'm at now and stuff like
right,
that, like really
right.
minor.
Yeah,
And I did it all natural and I did it my own way. And then 2020 rolls around and everything is crazy because I'm near a blue city. I'm not in the city, I'm near the city.
mhm,
And I had friends that lived there, friends that were participating in the
mhm,
shenanigans. And then
mhm.
Facebook went to hell and we were talking about like I couldn't understand why suddenly I couldn't communicate and reason with people. And I've always been such a good communicator.
Yeah,
Like the peacemaker, the
me
person
too.
that
Yeah,
could always and I think I'm a little bit of an empath, but I probably shut that off. But I think that's part of where that gift comes from, like being able
sure.
to understand people and
Right,
communicate.
understand what they want, what their
Yeah.
questions are.
Like I'm
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm not a precog or anything fancy, but I'm really good at understanding emotion
Mhm,
and reading
mhm,
people.
mhm.
Um, so everything went crazy and I always so we were talking about frequencies and I suspect, like I said, that they're using frequency manipulation on social media. I've
I
talked
think
about
so.
this
Yeah.
for at least 2 years on my podcast.
Well
Every now and then I'll bring it back up, but I can't explain why suddenly everyone collectively went insane.
so I totally I agree with you that I think that there are frequency messages, if you will, being put
Mhm.
out. Um,
And
but
it's
I also think that it's the straight up fear.
yeah.
Because it was just what we were just talking about how
Mhm.
when the fear kicks in your brain,
The
it
freeze in particular, I think for a
mhm,
lot of people that even were hypochondriacs or had some issues or whatever, and then when they enacted the protocols with COVID,
mhm,
because the protocol that they originally said was to just stay at home until you were on death's door and then go to the hospital, and then you
yeah.
can get put, on the respirator, which very few people ever come off of, whether it's
Well,
COVID or
people were
not.
panicked. Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah,
they
so,
were
like,
totally
everybody
panicked,
was
but
suddenly, they're like, "Oh, such and such dying of COVID." Well,
yeah,
really?
well, and that was if and so I think that there probably are subliminal and other frequencies that have been and still are being put out, but just the fear alone is
Yeah.
immensely powerful because it's just like we were talking about. So if your midbrain and your amygdala gets activated,
Mhm.
it takes the resources away from your frontal lobe, which is where you think, where you reason and use logic. And it takes the energy and the resources away from that part of your brain. And you literally can't think anymore. All you can do is focus on the fear and trying to stay alive and whatever it is that has activated in you, you've lost your ability to think rationally and to use critical thinking because your brain has literally been hijacked by the fear.
So,
And I think that's what
trauma
happened. Yeah.
trauma, induced trauma. So, I was even just thinking 9/11,
Yeah. Same thing.
a group induced trauma,
Mhm.
and then yeah, yeah. So much is making sense on this one. I hope everybody's enjoying this.
Well, and so, like, that's why like you were saying, you couldn't talk to the people around you anymore. It's like they couldn't hear you. And I had
No.
a very similar, a very poignant conversation with my mother at the
Mm,
time. During all of this, and I was trying to explain to her what I saw happening. And she said, "Honey, I'm trying to understand, but I don't know what you're saying. It's like you're on a different wavelength." I mean, and those were her exact words.
wow.
And I wasn't speaking gibberish. I was using, like we're
English.
talking here,
Yeah.
but she couldn't
Wow.
understand me. She couldn't hear me. And I think that that's where so many of us, split off because so many of us have talked about how we felt like we were living in our own world. We couldn't
Mhm.
communicate with the rest of the world. It was like this strange thing, and I think it was because we were literally operating on different frequencies and couldn't communicate. I
Yeah.
think when we talked before,
Mhm.
we were talking about the Schumann stuff. Didn't we
Yeah.
talk about how if you're on the same frequency as
Yes.
some, that's where you can share information, and if you're not on the same frequency, You can't. So if someone's operating at a fear frequency, they're down lower
Hmm.
and you're not afraid, right? You
Right.
might have other things going on, but you're not in that state.
Hmm.
You're not really even in the same dimension. You're not able to share
Mm.
information because you're not operating on the same frequency. And
Okay.
and I think like for you, already knowing that the medical stuff was BS
Hmm.
allowed you to see through the COVID stuff,
Hmm.
at least to the point that you weren't afraid. Because my thing was always, I've always been really grateful that my family and I actually got really sick before the COVID stuff hit. And I know that whatever COVID was,
See, and we got sick the Christmas before,
I was
and I
this was
researched it. That shit
Christmas,
came
and you
in.
just
It was
it was
released in
like
October
November.
of
Yeah.
2019. October, November, it came over. I did all the
Yep.
research and published that crap back. Oh God, that was
Yeah.
pretty early in my Telegram
Yeah, and
channel.
you realize that it was already
Yeah.
here, but nobody
Yeah.
knew about it. And
Yeah.
I remember I dragged my whole family into the doctor's office, which was unusual in and of itself because by that time I didn't go to the doctor anymore. But I had 3 sick kids and my husband was so sick and I didn't feel so hot myself. So I was like, okay. So anyway, we all go in, not one peep of, oh, there's some new illness going around, or, yes, we're seeing
Yeah.
some of this, nothing, not a peep. So anyway, we went through all of that. And then when
Mhm.
the COVID stuff started hitting the airwaves, we were like, that's what we had. I mean, the symptoms, the
Yep.
fact that it hit
That
the
was us
adults
too.
worse than the kids,
Mhm.
all of it matched what they were saying. So we were able then to go through that whole experience without falling into that fear mode because we were like, we're good. We already had this thing,
See, that was my husband and I. We were like, "Oh, well, we must have antibodies." To this day, he's never gotten it. And he
Yeah.
travels all over the world and does stuff.
Mhm.
He's never gotten it.
And whatever it is, I mean, at any given day,
Yeah.
I might tell you I have a different theory on what it is or was or whatever. But I mean, regardless, it just kept us from going into that frequency, which I think in many ways kind of saved us. And it allowed me to sit there and do all of the researching that I was doing and put the
Yeah.
pieces together. Because at first I couldn't explain it.
Right.
I just knew something
Too.
was wrong, but I couldn't
Mhm.
explain it. And I certainly couldn't explain it to anybody who wasn't inclined to
Yes.
already believe me.
Right. The few
But
times I tried, I mean, I still have a trouble explaining politics to certain people. It's like they just can't hear me. It's like
mhm.
what you were saying. Like I may it's like I sound like the teachers from the Charlie Brown series, the wonk
Yeah,
wonk 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 wonk.
exactly.
Like they
Yeah.
literally cannot understand
And
when
give
I
you the
am
deer in the
explaining.
headlights. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always take it from the sense of, well, there was this court case that proved this, and there are these
Right.
FOIA government like I always take it from hard facts because I know they
Right.
can't understand what the hell I'm saying.
Right. Well, and you're really good at that, making putting things in such a way that people can understand. And
Thank
that's what
you.
I was saying about me too, is like this ability to sort of be a bridge
Mhm.
between the
You and
two
Ash are great at
worlds.
that.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it that's what I am. That's what I do, and that's what lights me up. Like, I get excited about the idea of going, "Oh, I get this. Let me explain it to you," you
Mhm.
know? And I've kind of always been that way, but this really brought it home. But that makes me think of another point about, um, our emotions, like I was telling you, like those are kind of our guideposts, right? But
Yes.
our passions, if you want to call that an emotion, is also our guideposts. Like the things that we are
Mhm.
passionate about and
Mhm.
are excited about, that's your message. That is
Yes.
your giant clue bird telling you that that's something that you're supposed to be doing and putting
Yes.
energy and effort into,
Yes. I've had
And if
people tell me, "Oh, well, I can't do what you do." And I'm like, "That's okay. We're
yeah,
not supposed to be the same. I
right.
can't probably do what you're good at. That's the point. I'll do this and you do your thing and
Right.
everybody will grow." Like that's
Right.
what I really believe that's what our species is supposed to be doing. Like
Absolutely, and that's something I wanted to talk about today and, this awakening journey process is, you have your own path to walk. and
Yes.
it's not the same as anybody else's, and no one can sit there and try to map it out for you.
Yeah.
Like, it's made by you, it's walked by you, it comes into existence as you walk it, but the way you find that path is by figuring out what feels right and what
Mhm.
feels wrong to you. Like, when in your life are you in alignment, and when are things just going to hell in a handbasket and nothing's working and everything feels hard? You're off your path if it's like that, right?
Mhm.
And that's not to say you're even doing something wrong, because you're not. You can't find the edges of that path until you feel what it feels like to be off of it. And so it's
Right.
like a constant bumper car thing, like, or like, when you're bowling and put the bumpers in the side, to keep you out of the gutters. It's kind of like that. You bump off of one side and you go, oh, and then you go back to the middle and that feels pretty good. And then you bump over to the other side, because this whole thing is a dance in figuring out how to balance the energies in your own life. So
Yeah.
you have to do that yourself.
I
Nobody's
ended up
gonna help you.
disconnecting. I
What do you mean?
that's another thing I hear from so many people on the journey is, and I don't think they understand they're doing it. I think it's
Mhm.
natural. You just start pulling away, like, as you see everything is a lie,
Yeah.
it's all fake. So, I
Mhm.
don't give it any I just naturally don't give it any energy. I'm over
Right.
here doing my which is where I've had all this time to research because I stopped doing all the silly stuff.
Right.
I just lost all interest. Like,
Right.
I'll give you a good example. I got aggravated with my church, but I obviously wasn't gonna sacrifice my relationship with God because I was mad at a brick structure.
Sure. And the people in it. Yeah.
wasn't I was like, "That doesn't make any sense." So,
Right.
I pulled myself away from the structure and dug in, and my
Mhm.
relationship with God has just catapulted, and
Yep.
I I feel so much more connected, and it has allowed me to enjoy everything from nature to my interpersonal relationships to I have
Mhm.
grown so much just through that one avenue where
Right.
I disconnected. But I mean, I don't watch TV. I
Right.
don't,
I don't
you know,
either. Yeah.
I don't watch hardly anything, which is really weird because I technically produce films.
Yeah, but it's
It's
like you're
kinda
saying,
stupid, but
the frequency of it grates on you. I mean, that's what happened to me. I was like, "I can't do that. I can't watch this. I can't even be in a room with this crap
yeah.
on,"
Like,
you know?
right now, we're producing documentaries, which feels right in my soul because it's
Mhm.
truth.
Right.
We're recording truth and
Right.
putting it out there, and I'm great with it. I'm
Right.
having a ball with it. But, like, I couldn't bring myself to do a lot of the projects that come our way. I'm just like, "Oh, you know?
And that's a really clear sign, when something just really doesn't do it for you, well, don't do it.
Don't put
And
your energy
there's
there."
a difference, right? So there's a thing that happens where there'll be something that comes up for you that you're like, and maybe you're a little bit afraid to do it, but deep down you want to, or you need to. That's a different thing than what we're talking about, where you're actually like, the frequency's just not working for you. So it's not necessarily that everything you do you're going to be all yippee ki about it and like, yay, let's go, everything's great. It's not quite that, but it's just a sense of rightness, of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, this is what we're gonna
This is
do
what
right
I'm
now.
supposed to be. This is where I'm at right now, and that's
Mhm.
okay on the
Mhm.
journey.
Yeah.
Our chat is being so sweet. They are having a ball.
Oh, good.
They're having an absolute ball. They're getting a lot out of it.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you, Ohio
awesome.
Kimmy, for the cookie, and thank you, Ash, for the cookie. But yeah, I just keep seeing over and over how much they're enjoying the conversation.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't
You
think we have enough of these type of conversations.
Well, and I was thinking about it. I was like, "Oh yeah, her podcast is actually what we should have learned." Like, how do I frame it that way? And
It's
and
okay.
well, but
I don't
actually,
stress
this is
about it.
something we should have learned. We should have learned to follow our intuition. We should
Yes.
have been encouraged to listen to our emotions. We should have
Yes.
been allowed to get up from our stupid desks in elementary school when we felt like it, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um,
To all of it.
yeah, and so, that's a huge one. And when you start figuring out that that what you're doing isn't working for you anymore, you do disconnect and pull away. And so, we were talking in on my chat on Telegram today. We're talking about sort of like the phases in life and how
Oh,
one, there's a reason we have this thing called the midlife crisis. It's not it's not it's a real thing, right? And
it
it's a real
is.
thing because it's actually for a lot of people, they're trying to wake up. But
Mhm.
instead of doing that, they squish it down, right?
Mm.
So they gut it out harder, or they go, buy the new car, or they make all of the,
Yeah.
cliche mistakes, right? But really, the impetus for that is usually because that happens at the point in your life where you're starting to look back and go, "Gosh, what am I doing here?" Like,
Yeah, because you had a path that you thought you would be on, and
mhm.
most people aren't there. I'd say
Right, and then you realize
95%
that
are
it's
not
not
there.
working. Yeah, and you feel empty, and it's like, "What
Mhm.
in the
You
heck?"
feel like
So
a failure.
mhm.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
there's like an awakening process, I think, that happens throughout a normal lifetime,
Mhm.
and it might be this big colossal thing that you and I are talking about, or it might not.
Sure.
It
Yeah.
might be more of a mild thing, and you progress through your life, and you pick up some stuff, and then you kick the bucket, and you come back with what you got from the last one, and maybe it wasn't that much, because it's not until you actually understand and embody the stuff that you learn
Mm.
that you're able to take it with you, right? So,
That
and then
makes
when you come
sense.
back, you have attained a certain level. Like your memory still gets wiped. And this is
Mhm.
what I believe. I get that, some people listening to this probably
Yeah,
don't.
and
Um,
that's fine. We're
but
we're
then you
allowed to
come
have
back.
different opinions. I've known
Sure.
too many people that have regressed memories from 100 or more years ago, including my own
Well,
husband, to
and
think
to
that there's not something to this. I don't know how
exactly.
to explain it, but there is something to
And to
this.
put it into context, I didn't used to believe in it either. I mean, I was
Yeah.
brought up in the church, and then
Yep.
this is in my book too, a little bit about how, I was baptized Episcopalian. I went to Catholic school as a kid, which was interesting because I wasn't Catholic, right? I was Episcopalian, so we were Catholic light, but I wasn't special, so I couldn't have communion during mass, and I got, like, excluded from
That's
stuff
mean.
because I wasn't Catholic. Well, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and then on top of it, we ended up going to a more like non-denominational church later on. So I had these very distinct experiences with the different churches and what they
Mhm.
believed. And I, even as a kid, I was like, well, you guys are saying this, and this is how you be good and get to heaven. And you guys are saying this, and
Mhm.
that disagrees with that. And I don't,
But
you know,
supposedly they're all reading the same book. That's what always got me. They're
right.
all reading the same book, and they all have these completely different interpretations of rules.
And I would put forward that none of them know what it actually freaking means.
I
None of
kinda
them.
I lean that way now too.
Yeah, I mean, that's where a lot of my studying has taken me into, like,
Yeah.
all of those details on what all of that is, but they it it's just, for me, looking back, like we were talking about, those experiences were part of how I got to where I am, because
Mhm.
even as a little kid, I had these little seeds that were planted of like doubt, of like, what are
Mhm.
these people doing? Like, this doesn't make
Right.
sense.
Right.
And even when I would go to church, growing up, I hated it. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I did not enjoy going to church. Now, sometimes I'd go and there would be like a particularly uplifting sermon or something,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I'd feel good afterwards, or I'd go and you would just feel like, "Oh, I did my good deed and for the,"
Right. I
and,
It's
I'm like,
Sunday, I'm supposed
"Really?"
to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, and so,
But
like,
it
that
just
was,
wasn't. I
it just
know.
didn't, and there were a lot of times when I sat in the pews and I just was like, "Ugh." Like, I just had that bad, uncomfortable feeling,
Yeah.
not like I wanted to run away screaming, but just kinda like, "Oh, I don't
It
like
just
this."
didn't, yeah. Looking back, so much of it didn't resonate.
Mhm.
Like, every now and then, there would be certain ones, and when I was young, we had a particular pastor that was really good,
Mhm.
And so much of what he was communicating, I remember and resonate, but the ones since, not so much. And I
Yeah.
almost, looking from the 40,000-foot view, I kind of view all the different denominations of Christian the same way I view so many of the other institutions that we're seeing through the veil. I'll just say that. But
Yeah.
is it not another way to divide?
It
That's what it
absolutely is.
that's what it
Yeah.
feels like to me. It feels like we're all supposed to be Christian. We're all looking at the same book. Why are there so many different denominations?
Right.
And
And
why
with
are they
like
all
the
so freaking different if
yeah,
it's
and then
all
with
from the
with
same
the
text?
right,
I
and then
don't
it's we're
understand.
right and you're
Yeah.
wrong and you're going to hell, you know?
Right.
Like,
Right. It's not like we disagree. No, no, you're done for the afterlife. Like
"Oh,
it's
but we
crazy.
love you. We love you. You're just
We wanna
wrong."
change you. We wanna
Yeah,
change
so
everything about you, and you must submit and do it just
and those are
doesn't
very,
feel
very
right.
deep teachings that get ingrained into us, and I will say for me, on my personal journey, because just like you, when I really pulled back from that stuff and really started to look at it
Yeah.
and took things into my own hands, that's when
Yes.
I actually connected to God and to
Yes.
the universe and really was like, "Oh man, this is what it's about."
Yep.
But it wasn't until I was actually able to question, like to really, really question those things that had been, rooted deep, deep, deep in my psyche. And I'm sure I
Mhm.
haven't pulled all of them even out yet. But, once I was able to do that, it was, it all just kind of started to unravel. And it was
Mhm.
like, okay, okay, I
Yeah.
am on the right track here. And that's the thing too, is that at some point, like you said, when you wanted to get off of the meds and take
Mhm.
things into your own hands and heal,
Mhm.
right?
Yep. And a
There's
lot
a
of that was through prayer. And
yeah.
and God was moving his hand quite distinctly during that period with
Mhm.
me. He
Mhm.
really
And I
was.
and I would argue that it was, I'd say it was like the sincere desire of your heart and
Yes.
your mind, you used
Yes.
your will, but to call out for answers and for truth. And
Yes.
when that happens, and that's one of the very distinct steps, I think, on this journey is that when that happens, those answers do start coming to you,
Mhm.
and you start having the numbers and synchronicities and things happen in your life that are very clear to you that they're answers to your questions, they're
Yes.
answers to your prayers, they're things that are showing up for you because you opened up to that and you
Mhm.
asked for it with your frequency, right?
Mhm.
So when your heart is your generator, so when you're generating that frequency of truly, truly, truly wanting um to know the truth regardless of what that means, well, look out, buddy, because it's coming. Like you're going to get those answers. And I think that if there's any one thing that I could tell people that is the most helpful
Mhm.
is trust that.
Mm.
That is a real thing that is happening for to you and for you, but
Mhm.
it is for your benefit, and the more you lean into that and learn to trust it, the more you will get. And before you know it, you will realize that you are just having answers and wisdom and things coming to you from all over the place, but you have to open up to that, and I think you have to understand that that's even possible
Mhm.
in order to not waste a lot of time when it starts happening,
Yeah.
and be able to just
Just not
accept it.
question it and lean in.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
That's I think also we're also taught that we're just one little speck. We're just one little person out of 8 billion. But I think when you start tapping into that and you start acknowledging all of these little synchronicities, little answers that are coming to you that are unexplainable, but you're noticing them. I think
right,
it's at first I remember being overwhelmed that God actually heard me and was answering me out
mhm,
of 8 billion other people. Like,
mhm.
it's overwhelming. Maybe I'm not explaining it well, but that's how I felt,
Well, I
humbled and
think
overwhelmed.
yeah, and I think that that's a huge part of it. There's a sense of surrender, and just
Mhm.
being able to be like, oh, okay. And then that understanding starts to deepen, and you realize that you're not small. You're not an insignificant part of this, plan that's playing out here. You are absolutely integral, and that you have God flowing through you.
Mhm.
You don't have to beg to have, God, or however you view it, pay
Yeah.
attention to you. You just have to learn how to tap in because it's already inside of you. But
Yes.
that is a tricky one, and it's a really tricky one if you've been deeply, deeply conditioned to believe
Mhm.
that you're not worthy, or, that you're a wretch, or a sinner,
Right. Depending on
because
what you were taught.
yeah, because that feeling of unworthiness will stop that process in its tracks.
Yeah.
And to me, that's an indication, like, if you understand what that means, it understands that you have some inner work to do and some things to sort out inside of yourself so that you don't feel afraid and you don't feel unworthy.
Mhm.
Because those things are hindrances to the state that you are supposed to be existing in. And we were kind of talking before about, like, the division and like, why are these things done? Why are we taught these things? And I
Mhm.
don't know who did it first, or what, how it all played out, but I do know that deeply ingrained idea that you're not okay, that
Yeah.
there's original sin, that's a doozy. Or that, you know that you have to beg for forgiveness or whatever,
Mhm.
is so far from the truth, and it keeps you, those underlying beliefs keep you from being able to see the truth. And
Yeah,
that's why
that was
that
a
there's
hard one for me to work through.
oh,
That was a
it's
really hard one for me to work
it's
through.
brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal, because
Yeah.
you have to do the bad thing, right?
Yeah.
You have to have the bad
Well,
thought
and
and
I've
and
never done bad things. Like, it's not my
never.
nature. Like,
Right.
I'm not a mean-spirited. I'm just not. Like, the same person you see sitting here on the podcast is the same person you would run into at the grocery.
Mhm.
Like, I
And
this is me.
that's clear,
Th this is just
you're
me.
just
Like,
authentic. Yeah.
yeah. Like, but I've never purposefully done anything, so that was part of the whole thing that, again, it just, and I knew people that were so good and genuine, and then it just, I don't know how else to explain it, it just didn't make sense to me, and you know,
Yeah.
I'm not a biblical scholar or an expert or anything, I'm just speaking from the heart. Of
Yeah.
this is my experience, this is my journey, you know?
Yeah.
But
Well, and that's all we have, right? And that's
yeah.
why, like I told you, I just wanted to talk today. I don't have
Yeah.
specific things,
Yeah.
because what I'm talking about is just from my experience. Like, this is, I mean, clearly this is all just from my perspective and what I have come to know and
Mhm.
understand. But I have come to know and understand it at a
Right.
level that, like, you could sit there all day and try to tell me that I'm wrong, and I'd just be like, no, I mean, I because this is what has happened for me and inside of me, and I know that this is how this works. So, I mean, I might be wrong on some of the points and the details. I mean, that happens to everybody, but this is gnosis. This is stuff
Mhm.
that I have come to understand because it happened to me, and to have spiritual things and um well, I guess they're called paranormal things, happen,
Yeah.
supernatural. It's like, they're not
That you can't
supernatural,
explain.
they're
That's what you
natural.
see. You're
Yeah,
like,
but
That shouldn't be real, but I just saw it and I'm
it
fully
is.
awake."
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
pretty creepy the first few times.
It is. I mean, it is. It really can knock you for a loop, and sometimes even now, I'll be like, "Did that happen?" I mean, I still when something really kinda surprises me, I'll write it down because
That's
I
good.
know that my brain is gonna try to talk me out of that, or lessen it, or,
Yep.
try to explain it away. And I'll just write it down, And then later, like I pulled out my journals from the last few years, and there's so much stuff in there that I don't even remember writing. Or it'll be like, oh yeah, that happened. Oh my gosh, I had forgotten about that. Just
Mhm.
the synchronicities that happen, the stuff that comes to you,
Yeah.
so I mean, it really is I hesitate to call it a magical process, but I'll call it that because people understand that word,
I
that
think it
that
is. I mean,
yeah,
I think God is magic. Like, a lot of people shy away from that word, but to me, how is everything in our world that exists not just magical?
right. Because and
Just
it
our
is.
entire ecosystem
Yeah.
is so magical, from the little bugs to the plants to how everything depends on each other, and
Mhm.
how is that not? Like, and
Right.
people get so caught up in certain words, and I don't know. I just don't
Yeah.
sweat them.
The words are trouble,
The words are
'cause
important to a lot of people,
I mean, you
and they're
know,
not
you
to
see
me.
me get blasted pretty hard for using words that people don't want me to use, and I'm just kinda like, this is
You're like,
semantics now, where and if you
yeah,
wanna argue about it, we can, or you can understand that I'm actually saying what you're saying.
yes.
But I'm using a
We're just
different word.
using different term, but it's the
Mhm,
same thing we're talking about.
mhm.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that has come through with, the different religions and philosophies and
Mhm.
things over the ages is there's that term, the perennial philosophy, it's like
Mhm.
this these truths are there and they recur over and over and over, but the stories change and the framing changes based on the state of evolution that people are in at the time. So the stories change to fit what people understand at the time.
Mhm.
And the interpretations change, and that's where things get pretty dicey, right? Because of the
Yeah.
interpretations get
Yeah.
really twisted.
Yeah.
But the truth is still under there if you can get past the arguing and get past the semantics and try to see what is really being said. And what really made me hopeful and glad when I started seeing it was that they're all saying the same thing. And in
And
many
you
cases,
were going all the way back, because one of the things you love to study is Egyptian text also.
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
I
because
don't think people understand, like, the full scope of how far your research goes. You're
well, it goes all over the place, right? But
Mhm.
there is a definite thread going right back to ancient Egypt,
Mhm.
and another one that's linked directly to it, that goes to Ireland, that goes to the
Mhm.
Phoenicians, that goes to the Celts, that goes to the Druid,
Yeah.
all of that stuff is linked together to this ancient religion, we'll call it.
Mhm.
And I find it fascinating because how many times have you heard through the church or through that way of thinking, oh, there were sun worshipers, they were awful, they were pagans, they were
Right.
heathens,
Right.
they worshiped the sun god.
Right.
Oh boy.
I
I
know.
don't know if you had this
I'm
conversation
laughing because
today,
I know your channel.
but
Mhm.
but when you so and so the modern religions, I'll just say, have come out of that.
Mhm.
And it's very easy to see once you actually follow the threads, and you're like, there is no denying this. These stories have been told over and over and over through these different religions.
Right.
Same story, different characters, different names.
Well, even like the
The
flood,
same
they have
thing.
found the flood going all the like the story of Noah going
Yep.
all the way back.
Right.
So
Right.
either God continually flooded every so often, or it happened in a different time period.
Hmm.
I don't know the answer, but I know that they've found flood stories going back 10,000 years consistently in all different areas, in
Yeah.
different languages,
Destruction,
and
creation. Yeah.
yeah, like, I mean, a lot of the and I still do, how can I put this? I still do truly believe in the Bible. I believe in Jesus. I believe, from my personal experience with them, I believe in them.
Hmm.
But I have to wonder, So my husband is a good example of this. My husband, around 21, decided he was going to take a project and he was going to read every religious text he could find. He wanted to see exactly what you're saying. He wanted to see what the similarities were. If they were
Mhm.
talking about similar things, same basic principles. He took 2 years and he read damn near all of them.
Mhm.
I mean, everything he could get his hands on, everything but the Satanic Bible. He obviously wasn't going there,
Mhm.
but he read all the Hindu. He read all of Buddha. He read, he went back through and he studied the Torah. He studied
Mhm.
like everything, and he's like, yeah, they're all saying the similar things. Like pretty much, they're all talking about the same thing. He's like, it doesn't change my opinion. I still am devoutly Christian,
Mhm.
but the similarities are
Yeah.
there.
You
Like,
can't
it's
once you
you can't
see
deny
that.
that. Once you
Yeah.
read them, it's there.
Well,
So,
and yeah,
yeah.
the thing about the Bible is I would actually argue that I might hold it more sacred than a lot of church people do. Now,
Mhm.
they might think that I don't because of the things that I say, but, it actually is an encoded myth of man's evolution and the
Mm.
divinity within man that is available to man and
Mhm.
woman. Okay, you know what I
Mhm.
mean. And it is that story, and it is encoded into parables and allegories.
Yes.
And it's also reflected in the sun and the traversing of the sun through the signs of the zodiac throughout the year, and
Mhm.
all of these things are intertwined in there, and what they're actually pointing to is what a divine, magnificent creature human beings are and what we are
Mhm.
actually capable of. And there's stuff about
Which
the
has been lost to us.
body, exactly, microcosm and macrocosm, the whole as
Mhm.
above, so below, all of these things are in there
Mhm.
trying to tell you how special you are,
Mhm.
trying to point to you ways to evolve, ways to make not just your life better, but life better for everybody on the planet. The thing is, those stories and those allegories got encoded, and
Mm.
basically the keys were then lost to how to decode them.
Or they were
So
deliberately erased. I
well,
think
they
they were
tried to
erased.
deliberately
Yeah.
erase them. That definitely happened. I mean, when I talk about, like, the Druids, this one
Mhm.
fascinates me because they carried all of that knowledge inside of them, right? So they would spend, like,
Hmm.
20 years learning all of the material needed for them to be a Druid, right?
Oh,
A
wow.
Celtic priest or I think it was
Okay.
just but there were also priestesses. I'm not sure if they were called something else, but
Hmm.
anyway, they didn't have any books. They didn't write it down. They carried it in their heads. So then when the Holy Roman Empire came along trying to convert everyone to the new religion, they burned the books, they burned the scrolls, and they burned the Druids because the Druids were the books.
They were the carriers of knowledge for the
Mhm.
human anatomy. See, and
Right.
I look in the things that they accomplished in some of these ancient, like Egypt. Okay, how did they really build the pyramids? Do you really think they drug all that granite all that far, and then how did they get it up there? And like
Mhm.
that's
Yes, like,
crazy.
come on,
It's
come on. Yeah.
crazy.
Well, they
Like,
had thousands of slaves. It's
yeah,
like,
or or they used frequency and they knew how to manipulate our bodies.
yep, which they
They knew
did.
how to use, and all
Mhm.
of this knowledge, and I think about even like, the Library of Alexandria.
Yep.
Every time a civilization, and Rome's a good example of that too, the Mystery of Atlantis, you could even use that as a reference, but
Mhm.
every time we get to a certain level where we're doing great and we've got all of this knowledge tapped in, it gets knocked out from under us and all that knowledge is burned.
Mhm.
And it happens throughout history. And I don't think that's a religion thing. I think that's overlords.
I think religion might be used as
I
the
think it's a weapon.
vehicle.
I think it
Yeah,
gets weaponized.
right.
Yeah.
So take the teachings,
Mhm.
skew them enough so that they aren't useful to the people. So if you don't
Mm.
actually understand the teachings, you can't actually use them to do very much. You stay harmless basically because you don't understand what you are. You stay small and
Mm.
humble, and that's the way that they want it. Because if you actually understood what was in those texts,
You couldn't
you
be
wouldn't.
controlled.
Yeah.
You couldn't
Um,
be misled. You couldn't be like people would have seen through COVID.
right.
They would have
Right.
seen through it. They would have felt it. And
Mhm.
as it was, what maybe 10-15% of us felt it was
Yeah,
wrong?
I'd love to
Maybe?
know what the
I'd
actual
I'd love to
number
know
is.
what the actual number is. I have no idea. I'm just watching the chat here. Mhm. They're having a good time.
Oh, good.
I
Nobody
don't even
wants.
know what all they're having a good time. They've
Oh,
been
good.
having a good time. So I keep looking over every now and then. Thank you, Ash, for the cookie. I saw it a minute ago. Yeah, Vanessa DC, you're such a sweetheart. She's such a sweetie. So, how do you think, like, okay, so we're rolling into this crazy year. We're in clown world.
Mm.
Most of our friends and family are getting really uncomfortable. Let's just for simplicity's sake, I'll say the word normie. The ones
Okay, are
that
we
have
talking
just
about
been
now or in, like,
now.
2020? Okay.
Now.
Alright, I'm with you. Yep.
Yeah. I'm looking at our time frame. So the normies are now getting really uncomfortable. I think
Mhm.
the college, which what we're seeing on campuses is going to trigger a lot of people into
Mhm.
the this isn't my country, what's going on here? Like what we're
Right,
seeing them chant and do and and the fact that it's so widespread. I mean, we've
right.
been complaining about the education system for years now, and we were labeled conspiracy theorists, and
We
we get proved
right.
right yet again.
Yeah.
So we have all these people that are getting really uncomfortable. How can we help them move through the process?
Mm. So that's a really good question because at one point I would have said you have to go out to the street corner and scream at the top of your lungs. Like do whatever you can to get people's.
Yeah,
And I think like a lot of people, we learn pretty quickly that that doesn't work.
yeah.
You know, you
We tried
can't,
though.
yeah, you can't wake somebody up by dumping cold water on their head. It's a process. Just like we were talking about for you and I, there
Mhm.
was a lifetime of stuff that led up to that moment where everything clicked and
Yeah.
you got it. And so for other people, I think it's just, their process is still happening and it's going to take however many iterations of, stuff being put in their faces before they kick over into a different way of thinking.
Mhm.
But here's the way I see it. The the collective that we live
Mhm.
in, the ether
Mhm.
that we live in
Mhm.
is constructed of us, right?
Mhm.
So what we believe and what we know affects what is happening in that ether, in the vibrations all around us. Like you and I know things that we know and that we're talking about today, right?
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
is radiating off of us all the time, whether
Yeah.
we're talking or not.
Yeah.
So although it seems counterintuitive, and sometimes people are like, "No, you have to do something." Okay, well, go do something if you really feel in your heart that that's the thing that you are being called to do.
Mhm.
Do that, right? Whatever
Mhm.
that is. For me, it's to do what I'm doing. It's to research, it's to write, it's to put out
And to
what
put it
I'm
out there.
passionate
That
about.
that's what this is for
Oh,
me. This is
exactly.
my version of it. Yes.
And I know that you told me that that's how you felt, you have this
Mhm.
nudge to do this thing, and because that's the
Yep.
thing that you're supposed to be doing.
I
So
ignored it for a
as
while and then I finally gave up. So
doesn't
I was
work
like, "All right,
that well,
fine, I'll
does
do
it?
it."
So as we do this and we become more and more authentic and we embody that authenticity, we honor the thing that we're excited about and do that, we're
Mhm.
adding to that collective vibration of truth, of authenticity. And as that grows, throughout the collective, it continues to grow and it affects more and more people. So we all used to be asleep because we were all living in the same soup of lies and couldn't see out of it because that was all we knew. And somehow, people started pulling out of that, one by one. I always feel
Mhm.
really like amazed at the people who woke up, decades ago. Oh my
I
goodness.
know.
Imagine what that must have been like. But
God, that had to be so isolating.
I mean, I
It's
think
been
I
it's been
think
hard
that
enough, but I mean, if you
yeah,
woke up in the '90s, holy crap. Holy
I
crap.
I remember I had somebody when I was on active duty come to
Mhm.
me and he was talking to me about like New World Order and all this stuff. And I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He gave me some book. I was like, sure, I'll read it. I didn't read it. I guess he thought that I was somebody who maybe was going to get what he was saying, but I have to say I
Mm,
wasn't ready to hear it.
right.
So,
I wouldn't have been either. Because
yeah,
that
and
was what, 20 some years ago?
yeah, I mean, this was before 9/11.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
That
I
would
mean,
have been a
went,
lot to
I
take
went
in.
I mean, I deployed after 9/11. I had no idea about that.
Wow.
I thought we were doing the right thing. Anyway, um, so as far as like what to do, I think the best thing that people can do is learn to listen to themselves again,
Mm,
to like learn to tune in to who they really are and honor
yeah.
their feelings and their passions and their things that they want to do. It's time to start listening to ourselves
Mhm.
and our own intuition because so each of us is a God spark. Let's just call it that.
I
Each of
like
us
that. I
has
use that.
that inside of
Mhm.
us, right?
Yeah.
So if you learn to honor that over and above the egoic, earthly stuff and the things outside of you that are telling you, you need a fancy car, you need this to be happy, you need to go get plastic surgery. I mean, whatever, the list is
Right.
endless of
Oh,
all of
yeah.
the stuff that will pull you away from your own centeredness. So I think that the best thing by far that people can do is make space for themselves to find what that inner guidance is and tune into that spark inside of them and then follow that guidance and do the thing that in your heart is right for you to do. And that doesn't
Mhm.
mean like I'm not saying everybody run out and quit your job and go
Right.
do whatever. For some people it does work like that.
Mhm.
Uh, but just start making space in your life for you to be you and
Mhm.
question these things that you've always been told are supposed to be you.
Mhm.
The labels, the certificates,
Yeah.
the roles, all of it. Because, and this is actually, I wanted to say this at the beginning and I
Huh.
totally forgot. But the thing about me is when I started sort of getting it along these lines, especially when it came to, all of this kind of esoteric stuff, I was like,
Mhm.
gosh, maybe I should join a group. Maybe I should take a class. Maybe I should join a society. Maybe, like,
Right.
do I need help? Right.
Right.
And I
Because you
purposely,
feel lost.
yeah, because
I
because
did.
everything is yanked out from under you, right?
Yep.
But I had this really amazing thing happen to me one day, and it was when like all of this stuff really kind of started kicking off for me, like
Mhm.
spiritually. And I kept having this word pop into my head, and it was just John, John. And I knew that it meant that I was supposed to go read the book of John. But I kept sort of ignoring it. And like you said, it doesn't work real well, right? So finally, it just kept getting sidetracked. And finally, I was like, all right, fine, I'll go read it, right? So I go down, I grab my grandmother's old Bible,
Aw.
and I've never been much of a biblical scholar either, so I didn't know where in the book it was, but I let it fall open, and it fell
That's a
open.
good thing to do. I
Yeah,
do that a lot.
it's amazing, right?
That's
As long
freaky.
Yeah, as long as you don't talk yourself out of thinking that it's a good thing to
Mhm.
do. We can
Just
screw
pray and let it open.
really easy. So what happened was it opened up to First John, which I have to admit at the time I didn't even realize there was a First John and Second John and whatever. But I was like, okay, that must be what I'm supposed to read. And I knew that it was because my eye fell directly to the verse that says, "You need that no man teach you." Basically, you have everything that you need inside of you already, and you need that no
Mhm.
one teach you. And it was like, oh,
I can
okay.
do this. Mhm.
That's the answer to my question. So from that point forward, I have avoided joining any groups,
Mhm.
joining any societies, paying for information. I try really hard not to do that unless I have to, like if it's a book
Right.
that I feel like I
Right.
really need or something. And from that point forward, every single time I had a question on my heart or a thing that I was kind of like starting to wonder about, lo and behold, the information about that would land right in front of me, whether it was a video someone sent me, a book that I became aware of, a book that I was reading that there was something else inside of it that pointed me to something else. And it's just been this trail all along of these perfect synchronicities of
Mm.
the information. It's like, oh, here's the answer to your question. Oh, here's the answer to your next question, and so that's the path that I have followed because
Mhm.
I was really kind of deathly afraid of getting caught into another trap of like, I don't
Me
want to join
too.
some group where they're going to tell me I need to
Me
do
too.
X, Y, Z. And next thing you know, I'm
Mhm.
just nodding along to everything that they say.
Right. Me too.
So a lot of what I say to people might sound very much like, like a lot of the stuff that I have come to understand, I later learned was Rosicrucianism. And I didn't realize that that's what I was tapping into,
I
but
didn't even
that's
know what
what
that is.
like esoteric knowledge, wisdom societies, like
Oh.
there's a whole ties back to Holy Grail, ties back to
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's not a direct descendant, but there have been these evolutions of this information. And
Hmm,
so when
okay.
I say the information, I'm talking about the stuff that goes all the way back to ancient Egypt. And
Gotcha.
that's
Gotcha.
so it's all the same stuff,
Mm.
but just carried by different people and different groups throughout the ages. But I just
Mhm.
so sometimes I will say stuff and people will say, "Oh, that's Gnosticism or that's from the Rosicrucian text or that's, this kind of thing." And I'm like, "Is it?"
Yeah,
Because
that's one
I haven't
iteration of it,
approached
but
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't feel
just
like we
been
know the origin of anything.
I don't know that we know it,
Yeah, like,
to any ability to say for sure,
I mean,
Like,
every time
maybe
I think
somebody
about
does.
just I think about, like, Tartania, okay, like that rabbit hole,
Mhm.
and then I look at all the information, everybody's like, "Oh, but this is the information, and this is it," and I'm like,
It's like, "Yeah, but
"Is
you read
it?
that on the internet."
Is it?"
Yeah,
Anything digital is manipulated, can be
exactly,
easily, anything.
exactly.
Look at the Mandela effect.
Mhm.
For anybody that doesn't think that anything out there can be manipulated or, what was that movie I watched? I wanna say Rollerblade. It's from the '70s, the
Oh,
original.
Blade
You know what
Runner?
No, that
Oh.
was the '80s. I think it was Rollerball. But
Oh, okay.
in this crazy society, it was a modern sci-fi film that had a sports content to it, but everything was digital. And he
Uh-huh.
was trying to go to a library and look things up, and they denied his pass. And then when
Mhm.
he finally got access, what he remembered reading had been erased.
Yep, and that's where we
Everything
are right now.
there's
Yep,
so much in that film. I need to get that one back out. I need to try and
and
find a digital
and you
copy of
and you
that.
have to be aware of that. I mean, you have to really understand that
Yeah.
our our world is so manipulated and so easily manipulated, and we are so easily manipulated because our
Mhm.
perception is manipulated.
God, yes.
And so I think going back to what I was saying about
Yes.
following your inner
Sorry.
guidance. No, we weren't off track, but following your inner guidance is so important because that is your thread to truth. Because you as a human being are tuned to things that are true and authentic.
Mhm.
And when something resonates for you, it's because that is an indication that it is resonating with the core of who you are, and that's what you need to tune into and not be swayed by this outside stuff. And the swaying happens no matter what. You can be the greatest researcher in the world, but you're still having to use these
Mhm.
products here in this
Mhm.
world, and you certainly don't know beyond a shadow of a doubt,
I
you know
wrestle with
what
this daily.
Yeah,
when I'm
and
going through news because I
yeah,
don't trust
for
anything.
the
I don't
news,
trust any of it.
no,
There's
you
quite a few
can't.
topics I don't touch because they're happening in other countries and they're in different languages, and I know how easy it is to manipulate footage.
Yep.
It's so easy, and it's now everything is cheap. Anybody can do it.
Yeah, and as soon as you can access a person's emotions,
That's the
then
gateway.
all bets are off, man, because they will bite
Yep.
off on
Well, look
anything.
look at George Floyd.
Mhm.
That
Good
accessed
example,
everyone's
yeah.
emotions. So
Yep.
we already had them in complete fear and shut down. So they were already in a freeze situation from COVID.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
you injected this other, and it did a completely different emotional spark.
Right. Right.
And
At the
you know,
expense of critical thinking
yes,
and logic.
again, nobody could think clearly.
Mhm.
And there was so much more to that footage than the
Oh,
snippet that went viral, you know?
oh,
So
I
much more to
hear
that
people
footage.
now, regurgitating that and
I
referring to
know.
it,
It's
and I just
painful.
and I know there's no point in even trying
I
to.
know. I'm just like, go look up the coroner's report and come
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
We can have a discussion. Go look at the coroner's report. Go look at the full video that's
Mhm.
like 20 or 30 minutes and come
Oh,
back
what?
and we'll talk.
I can't watch 20, 30 minutes,
Well, then
'cause
shut your
that's the
trap
thing
and move
too,
on.
because
Stop
'cause
talking about
we're in
stuff.
snippet mode, right?
I
Like,
get
if
so
it's longer than
frustrated.
yeah, people won't watch it, and,
I'm
God,
like,
asking somebody to read something that's
oh,
over a certain length,
oh
that's
my
not
God.
happening, you know? So we're in this really weird place where we have access to all of this information, but it's so fragmented, and, you can get fragments of something, but if you don't have the whole context, you don't know what you are reading or seeing. You just
Yep.
don't. And I think just the awareness of that helps to counter it. But most
Hmm.
people aren't thinking that way. They almost want
They want everything to be
to
simple.
have their emotions yanked,
They want
because
it
it's
a
kind of
yes or no. That's it.
yeah.
It's this or
Tell me what
that.
to think. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to think so that I don't have to do it. I mean, that's where we are.
And
They
that's so sad. That's
It
not
is.
what we're meant to be.
No, because we are so capable of doing and experiencing amazing, amazing
Yes.
things. And we're
Yes.
stuck in this, slave state basically of, being too afraid of our own
Mhm.
shadows, literally and figuratively to
Mhm.
do anything. So anyway, I just think awareness is the first step,
Okay.
being able to observe what is happening,
Mhm.
try, just like you're saying, just even understanding that what you're getting might not be the full story. That's the first step. And it's the
Yeah.
same thing in sort of the spiritual awakening journey, is that the first
Mhm.
step is becoming the observer of yourself and of your own thoughts and your own actions. That's the very first step in the process and in doing things differently, is actually learning to look at yourself without
Mhm.
fear, and do it totally openly. So,
Yeah.
anyway, I think we're probably running out of time, aren't we?
We're close.
Okay.
They're off on movie tangents now.
Okay.
They're talking about movies that express Mandela effect, different ones.
There's so many movies
There's a
that
bunch. I never have seen the butterfly effect. I need to make time and go look at that one because
that's so weird
that's
'cause I've never watched it either, Mary.
if I can
I've
find a copy of it, do you wanna do a watch party?
Yeah, I'm watching to get an actual first reaction to that thing.
Yeah.
I've never watched it, and there was
Well,
there was a
I
period of
named it Chicks
time.
and Flicks, so like,
Oh,
anytime you
perfect.
wanna come.
We had lots of movies to watch. There
Oh
was
my
a period
god.
of time, though, where I couldn't watch anything.
I know.
Like when you first wake up and then you figure out what's going on, and
Yeah.
you have that dark night
Everything
of the
is
soul.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like I couldn't watch movies, I couldn't watch shows.
It
It's
forced
only
me to
been
lean
pretty
into God.
recently. Yeah,
That phase is when I really leaned in.
you gotta. You got it,
That
because I mean, you are
I felt
stripped
so
down to
adrift and
nothing.
so isolated, and nobody in my sphere was
Mhm.
on that frequency.
Yeah.
Nobody was. I was alone and I was a little island.
Yeah, me too. Most of
And
the people I've talked to, that has been the
yeah,
experience, was that wherever you were the only one, you know?
isn't that wild?
It really is. It really is. I ended up having one friend in England
Mhm.
who got it. Um, Thankfully, my family was open-minded enough to actually listen to my crazy talk and had enough, I guess, respect for me to listen to what I was saying, even if I did sound kinda Looney Tune sometimes, you know? But, yeah, I mean, there really wasn't anybody
Yeah.
around, that I could talk to, and like you're saying, that's what I hear from most people, is that wherever they were at the time that that happened, they were the only
Mhm.
one.
Made me stronger.
Mhm.
I mean,
It
my
has
my
to.
will just increased. Like my strong-willed nature just dug in even more. I
Me
will say
too.
it, and I'm grateful.
Me
I'm
too.
grateful for it. I really am. I
Yeah.
wouldn't change anything about my process and where I'm
Mhm.
at and where I've come.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I wouldn't change any of it. And it's so frustrating to still see people that just aren't ready to understand and cope with it. And I genuinely want to help them. I
Yeah.
can't figure out how.
Yeah. Me too, and it's hard, and it hurts. The one thing
Yeah.
that makes me feel better in a way is to understand, at least the way I look at it, is that, you know, not everybody came here at this period of time to wake up, to do whatever it is
Mm,
that we're doing. Some people came to be the example, the ones. I think that people came knowing that they were gonna have to check out. So,
wow.
because how can you
Mm,
have this crisis that's waking so many people up if you don't actually have a crisis, right?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's just the way I make sense of it sometimes. Like, I think we all this whole thing that's happening is so much bigger than
Yes.
what it seems on the surface. And it's hard because I think a lot of us thought for a long time, like, "Oh, something's gonna happen and everything's gonna change, like, right away." And then you're in this for
I
a
was
while and you
very hopeful.
realize it's
I
gonna take
know.
a while.
I
It's
kept thinking, how bad is it gonna have to get for them
Mhm.
to understand? And I kept praying we wouldn't get to where we are.
Me too. I
I
really
really prayed we
thought
wouldn't be
we
here.
were gonna pull the lever there somewhere.
Surely they'll see. They'll see. Yeah. No.
Mhm.
No, here we are.
But there's so many people and so many different perspectives, and just like we were talking about, you can't force it, you can't just walk up to somebody and explain to them what's going on. It just doesn't
Ugh,
work. So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think the best thing that we can all do is, take care of ourselves, understanding that this is a long haul
Mhm.
process,
Mhm.
but then also take the time to notice what has been happening and what has happened, and
Mhm.
the advancement that we have made. Because even though we're saying, gosh, I would have thought we wouldn't have gotten to this point, at the same time we can look back and see in pretty rapid succession, things changing, stuff being put out into the world that wasn't there before. So,
Right? We are moving at a very accelerated pace.
mhm,
It feels like everything just keeps speeding up.
mhm.
Well, when are you thinking your book is gonna come out? I know you told me this summer. Are you gonna put it up on Amazon or
Yeah, it'll be on Amazon, because it'll end up being published through Amazon. I didn't really
Mhm.
wanna do that other dance. So, um, I'm hoping this summer. For a while, I didn't even wanna tell people that it was coming because it kept not coming together. I was doing what I
Mm,
was saying to you, and now finally
mhm.
it's like, "Okay, this is what's happening." So, I just have to keep plugging away at it, but it's coming, and it
Well,
should be out
definitely
this
when
summer.
when you're about to release it, I definitely want to have you back on for that
Okay.
sole purpose, so
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
we
I'd
can
love
push
that.
that.
Yeah, I would
'Cause
love that.
and anybody that wants to see your stuff, they can go to your Telegram channel,
Yep.
which we've been putting all the links in the chats, and I know we put it in all the announcements, but it's Truth
Mhm.
Rascal
Thank you.
is your
Yep.
hand.
Yeah, yeah, that's my handle. It's funny because it just came to me one day as I was trying to figure all this stuff out because Rascal was my handle in the service. That was my call
That
sign.
makes
So
sense.
yeah, it's kind of a
That
funny
makes sense.
name, but it has legit origins. So
Mhm.
I just kind of stuck with it.
Maybe we can get Ash, to come on with us, and we could do I'd love to do an episode on cleansing,
Mhm.
detox,
Yeah.
and I know the other area that you guys really specialize is shadow work, and
Yeah.
that's something almost nobody talks about.
Yeah, and that ties right into kind of what we were talking about
Mhm.
here because one of those things on this whole awakening journey is, boy, you better be ready to do that shadow work
Yeah,
because it is a
yeah.
necessary part of the process. But you're right, people don't talk about it because it sounds creepy and scary
It
and kind of
does.
nebulous. It's like, what? Shadow
Yeah,
work,
but
you know?
it's basically understanding your past trauma, forgiving
Mhm.
yourself, and reuniting and healing your
Yeah,
your inner your inner person,
right.
basically, so you can be whole, functional, and move forward with your life in a positive way. That's what
Right,
shadow work
without
is. I
right,
wish it was
without
named something
repeating
else.
those patterns. Well,
Yeah.
it's also
It's
very much inner child work, but that one can be a
yeah.
turn off too, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, really, it's honestly looking at yourself and your own crap that you do, and being able to, like you said, forgive yourself and look at it and
Mhm.
understand, why you have done the things you've done. And for me, one of the biggest eye openers was realizing that there were patterns in my life that I kept repeating based on,
Self-destruction.
original wounds and traumas
Yep.
and repeating relationships and, interactions with people. I mean, it is
Yeah.
wild that's what we do because we're constantly trying to give ourselves the opportunity to do it
To
different.
fix, to
Yeah,
read, to change a different path, and we keep repeating.
right.
And I
Until
think
you
about
learn the
that
lesson, you will repeat it and you won't see it.
and
It's
tie that
wild.
into the current culture where you remove history
Mhm. Right?
for the bigger
Yeah.
picture.
So,
You're
I mean, talk
removing
about
history,
destined to yeah,
tie it into the Mandela effect, tie it into whatever you want, but
right.
how are you I think that's part of the spiritual awakening that's the bigger picture. I think it links into the shadow work, and then you can pull back at the 40,000-foot view,
Mhm.
and they're doing that on a mass scale.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a really good point. So much of this stuff is the individual experience on a massive scale, you know? We should probably do a whole talk just on that,
I know. I
you
know.
know,
Ask Ash if
what's
she'd be
really
willing to
going
do
on here.
shadow work, because I know she had to work and really pull through a lot.
Oh,
I
yeah. Yeah.
I've had to
Yeah,
do
I'll
some,
talk to her.
but I had already done mine before the awakening, ironically.
Mm,
But the
bonus.
hardest part was when I realized I was so mad at myself that I'd gotten in a situation and I hadn't
Mhm,
forgiven myself.
mhm.
And it took me years to get that through my head that it was okay. I
Yep,
screwed up. I'm not going to do it again. It's all right. I forgive me. I
yep,
think that's, people always say you can't harbor the hate and you have to forgive the person.
right,
I think
right.
it's more about forgiving yourself.
Absolutely, it is, and that goes right back to what I was talking about everything is centered on you, because if you think that you need to wait around for somebody else to forgive you,
Yes.
to grant you forgiveness, to
Yes.
suddenly from the outside, something's
Yes.
gonna come and make you feel forgiven,
Yes.
that is never gonna happen. You you might get that
Well,
sensation,
you're
but
giving your
until
power away.
you exactly, and until
You've given away
you
all of your
honestly
power.
do it for yourself, you
Mhm.
will never get over whatever that thing is. It is all
It
about
took
you,
me
baby.
most of my 20s to figure that out.
Yeah. It's hard, and it's hard when you've been taught that it's outside of you and that you're
Yes.
being judged outside of
Yes.
you, and that if you don't get some kind of external expert to make it
Mhm.
all okay, then it's not okay.
And to validate your feelings,
Yeah. Yeah.
or you take a pill to dull it because you can't deal
Mhm.
with it and you can't process it. And I think
Uh-huh.
that goes back into a lot of the trauma that we're
Yep.
seeing, whether you call it trauma, shadow work. Again, it's same meaning, different language.
But we definitely need to do a talk
Yeah.
just on this. Yeah.
Ask Ash. Ask Ash
Okay.
and look at the
Okay.
calendar. You can get
Okay.
her to do it. You're
Well,
closer to Ash. You ask her.
I'll see what she's got going. I know she would want to. I know she would want to. She's just been super busy. I know she wanted to do this one too, but
She's a busy mom.
yeah,
She's super
crazy.
busy. They're all
I don't know
young.
how she does what
I
she
don't
does.
I don't know how
You
she
know,
does
I
either.
barely do
Dear
what I
God.
do, and I don't have 4 littles running around,
I
so
know. And they're all really little.
yeah, yeah,
Because she
it's
just had
amazing.
it's her baby 2 now, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Gosh,
Yeah.
time flies.
Crazy, isn't
I
it?
remember when she was pregnant
I know. I know so much has happened in these few
these
last
times.
years, you
Yep,
know? And I mean, if
yep.
you'd have asked me then if I would still be doing this, 3 and a
I
half
know,
years later, I'd be like,
I know,
"No, I'm gonna
I know.
be, living in the forest somewhere." Or I don't know. I mean, but you're right. And, I think that's okay. So, I'll end on this note. So, one of the last stages of the awakening process, which I don't know what we really covered step to step, but
Hmm.
the last one is embodiment of what you've learned. And I think
Mm,
that what is happening now, I feel like collectively, what has happened lately is that those of us who have been on this path, on a similar trajectory to what like you and I have been talking about, is that now
mhm.
we're being asked to go back out into the world and connect and bring back what we
Yeah.
know. Because I really did want to run off to the woods and I would honestly be perfectly happy there. But
Mhm.
that's not my purpose.
I know.
That
I
doesn't
have
do
the
anybody
same.
else any good.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have to run back into the burning building and not just pull the people out, but, you know, teach them what we have figured out.
Yeah. Because what else is the knowledge? I mean, once
Yeah,
you
it's that
fix you,
embodiment.
then it's like, "All right, what now?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's
You
like
know?
because that's the thing. You can know all day all of these wonderful, amazing spiritual principles, but the real task, I think, is to actually embody them out
Mm,
into the world. That's
yeah.
and that's the tricky one. It's like because sometimes I think, man, I know all of this amazing stuff. Why am I still in a bad mood and want to punch somebody in the face? Like it happens, and it's like, okay, get a grip, recenter, but it's bringing that stuff. It's being the bridge between spirit and matter. That's our job. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's everybody's job, but
No,
on
but
on the
thank God and again, this goes back to everybody's good in here for everybody is meant to do something different. We're
mm,
not supposed to all be the same, and that's okay. That's a good thing.
exactly. I
That's a
mean,
very good
who would
thing.
want to live in a world where everybody's the
Oh
same?
gosh. I know.
They've been trying to get us to do.
Bless your heart. Ash has given us 3 cookies. Thank you, honey.
Oh,
She's such a sweetheart. All
thank
right.
you,
Well,
everybody who's here. I can't see it, and that's okay. But
oh,
thank you all for.
and thank you, Trick Pony and Blonde BLQ for the cookie and the can. Thank you guys. I'm simulcasting on 2 different channels on Pill, and
Oh,
I've got them
gotcha.
both open.
Nice.
So I was flipping back and forth. Thank you guys so much. I can't tell you all how much I appreciate it. I really, really do. Well, all right. Let me release the scratching for everybody that's hung in here with us. Let me do
Yeah,
that.
thank you. We talked a long time, but I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I've had a ball. I always enjoy getting to spend time with you.
Well, it's funny. I don't talk that much in general. I'm not like so when I guess my point is when I do sit down and talk to you, everything just kind of spills out like crazy because it's all built up like a dam.
That's true. Well, because your medium is different.
Yeah.
Um,
Writing is much more my
your
thing, but
medium is completely different. So then finally, I think when you get those chances, and I'm releasing the scratching on both channels, kids. So grab them wherever you are. Um, they get gold pills. They get a little free.
oh, cool.
So yeah, so they give you gold pills, and then at the end you release. It's called the scratching, and they can click on a couple buttons, and they get a few little gold pills back, and you can, I mean, you can rack them up.
Oh,
So
that's cool. It's like a
yeah,
video game.
pill.net is a neat platform. It's really
It
cool.
is. I was kinda overwhelmed when I first saw it, when Johnny was on
Yeah,
there a couple of years ago, I guess, because it
they've
just had all
redone
these
it.
features, and I was like, "I don't even know how to do this," but I think there's a lot of cool stuff that's built in there,
And it's truly a free platform, free
and that's
speech,
the
free.
key. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
truly a free speech platform. So I mean, I put this on YouTube knowing I might get struck or whatever, but I I feel compelled to push this out as far as I can.
Yep.
I
And
think
it's
every
that
episode is important,
yeah,
you
it
know?
is, and that nudge that you're getting to do it is important,
I feel like
and
there's somebody out there that needs to hear something from
mhm.
every episode, because every guest is teaching me things, and I'm
Right.
connecting, and I enjoy this show so much. I love doing this show.
Well, and I think too, for me, when I started putting stuff out, even on Telegram, I had the very clear guidance that that's what I was supposed to do, but to not worry about where it
Mhm.
went, not
Mhm.
worry about
Yeah,
followers or any
just
of that. Just
push it
let
out in the
let it
ether and
go
let it
where it
go.
needs to go. Yep, and it
That's
will.
been
It will
you.
get yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Ugh, wild times. Oh, thank you everybody for hanging in with us. Next week I have a life coach that's gonna be on, and we're gonna talk about communications. I've
cool.
I've been dying to get into the different ways that male and female communicate on principles.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Ooh,
so
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'm fascinated by that stuff because we are wired differently
Oh, yeah.
and we communicate differently, and I think this falls really much really I'm talking goofy tonight. How what we should have learned, because we should have been taught how to communicate from elementary school
Mhm,
forward. It should have
mhm.
been just as important as math,
Right.
really. Um, and we suffer so much by not being able to communicate. Think about dating. Think about
Yeah,
even just your siblings, your parents, your
right.
coworkers. Like
And
everything we do is communication.
yeah, and it being taboo somehow to address it to male and female because we are
Right.
wired differently, and as soon as you can understand that our energies are different and should
And
be
that's a good
different
thing. They're
yeah,
meant to be.
right, but we're brought up in this, everybody's supposed to ignore that and everybody's
Right.
equal, and it's like, well, you can be equal and different, you know?
It's wild, isn't it?
It
I don't
really
know.
is.
I'm excited about it. Well, I want to have you back. We'll talk about those other two topics. We'll see if we can get Ash in here. I really want to do one also on, like I said, cleansing, because more and more I keep hearing people that don't know how to cleanse.
Mhm.
And there's a fasting element, there's different things. There's several different ways to do it.
Yep,
And you
yep,
have to know
and I
your body
thought about that,
and
yeah.
what your body can tolerate. And I know you have a whole different thing on parasite cleansing that you've learned and had
Yep,
to
I've
do.
I've probably run the gamut in about every type there is. I am my own guinea pig.
So we'll have those back on. Is there any final thoughts or anything you want to leave us with?
No, just thank you. This is awesome. I always love talking to you, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and I wanna honor the fact that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I think that's
Oh,
awesome. It's very clear to
thank
me,
you.
so, yeah, thank you for that,
Thank you,
and
honey.
yeah, I love you.
Thank you. I love you too, my buddy. I know. All right, there's another show after mine. Should be coming up, Sean and Duppy. I have no idea what movie they're playing tonight, kids. I don't know. I'm sure it'll be something good. They've been doing Hunger Games, so they're probably still doing Hunger Games. So, yeah, there'll be a watch party for that. All right. I'm going to wind down here, guys.
Everybody.
Thank you all so much.